What would you do when a neighbor calls 911? The question hung in the air, heavy and confusing, as I stood at the door, peering at two police officers. "You can't swim in your pool," one of them said, his expression a mix of concern and disbelief. It was shocking to hear him say that. I had just been enjoying a peaceful afternoon at home, the sun warming my skin. Now, it felt like my entire world was upended. I'm Keith, and at 54 years old, I've spent more than 30 years living in this simple 3-bedroom, 1-story house tucked away in Kent. Nothing flashy, just a comfortable home surrounded by neighbors who, for the most part, understood each other. Yet here I was, facing a situation that threatened the quiet life I had built. "What's going on?" I asked, confusion flooding my voice as I glanced back into my home, seeking some level of comfort in the familiar. The officer glanced at his partner, then back to me. A neighbor reported concern over a homeless person in the area. He explained, his tone gentle but firm. "We need to check things out." Homeless? The word struck me like a bolt of lightning. Did Shirley, my new neighbor, really think I was some vagrant simply because I was lounging in my yard? The thought curled in my stomach like a bad meal. I was a man who took pride in my home, who cared for my garden, and who found joy in the simple things. "I own this house. This is my home," I replied, trying to keep my voice steady, though I could feel panic creeping in. I looked past the officers and met Shirley's gaze. She stood behind them, arms crossed, an unsettling grin playing on her lips, pleased with this absurd turn of events. It was as if she had orchestrated this entire scene with cold precision, taking advantage of the simplest act, sunbathing by my pool. As the officers continued to question me, I fought against a wave of frustration that threatened to crash over me. Why would she think that? I thought. The neighbors had always been friendly, if a bit reserved, and I had taken special care to maintain a respectful distance. But was that enough to keep her from judging me based on appearances? "I'm just relaxing," I insisted, gesturing to the pool where my towel and drink still lay. "It's a hot day, and I was enjoying some sun." The officer nodded, but I could see doubt lingering in his eyes. They had a job to do, and I understood that, but I couldn't shake the feeling of being accused of something I wasn't. "Can we take a look around?" he asked, his voice maintaining a professional tone. I hesitated for a moment before stepping aside and allowing them into my yard, an uneasy knot tightening in my chest. What would they find? My garden? The pool? Would they think it was all just a cover-up for some hidden life I didn't lead? As they walked around, I found myself anxiously glancing back at Shirley. Did she find satisfaction in my discomfort? Was the happiness I'd cultivated here really so fragile that it could be shattered by one careless accusation? One of the officers inspected my lawn, while the other examined the pool area, turning to me with a slightly furrowed brow. "How long have you lived here?" "More than 30 years, I replied, a little defensively. "Long enough to know my neighbors." "Right. And do you have any identification on you?" "Of course," I said, reaching for my wallet. As I handed my ID to the officer, I realized how ridiculous the situation was. A man in his own yard, being questioned about his right to exist in his own home, all because one person decided to campaign against me. He glanced at the ID, then back at me. "Everything seems to check out," he said, "but we need to ensure there aren't any ongoing issues." I could feel the weight of Shirley's gaze as she stood there, arms crossed, watching with a look that screamed vindication. Gritting my teeth, I resisted the urge to confront her right then and there. As the officers wrapped up their questioning, I felt a heaviness settling in my chest. They explained their need to follow protocols, assuring me they weren't trying to cause trouble. "We're just making sure everything is okay," one officer said gently, trying to soothe the tension. But how could I explain to them that my sense of belonging was now in question, that my quiet life was shaken by the very neighbor I'd hoped would fit into the fabric of our community? "Thank you for your time," the officers finally said, starting to turn away. With their departure, I returned to the bright sunlight, but the warmth felt different now. The bright blue of the pool shimmered invitingly, but it felt tainted, marred by the confrontation I had just endured. I cast one last glance at Shirley, unable to hide the defiance in my eyes. She merely smiled, a victorious glint dancing in her gaze. Little did she know, this wouldn't be the last she heard from me. A quiet life could only harbor so much chaos before it fought back, and I was done being the target of her misguided judgment. As I sat by my pool, I started to think of ways to reclaim my space, to remind her and everyone else that I was not just a silent neighbor. I was a man with a story, and I wouldn't let anyone overshadow it. I could feel the uneasy tension settling back in as I watched Shirley stride into my yard, a smirk still lingering on her face. It frustrated me, but I was determined not to let her ruin this barbecue. "Thanks for coming," I said, trying to keep my tone light. "Everyone's welcome." She glanced around, taking in the laughter and chatter of my neighbors as they filled their plates with food. "It looks nice," she remarked, though the way she said it suggested she didn't mean it. It was more of a critique than a compliment. "Just trying to bring the community together," I replied, handing her a plate. "How are you settling in?" "Fine, I guess," she shrugged, her eyes scanning the crowd like she was judging them. "But I think some people could do with a little guidance. You know, uphold the standards of the neighborhood." Her words made my stomach churn. What did she mean by standards? My palms felt sweaty around the grill spatula, and I forced myself to stay calm. "Standards are important, but so is kindness," I said, my voice steady. "We all have to live together, after all." "Oh, I agree," she said, her smile not reaching her eyes. "But kindness without some boundaries, it just leads to chaos." I was about to respond, but I caught the eyes of a couple of neighbors nearby, and I could see their discomfort growing. I didn't want this day to become a battleground, not in front of my friends. Instead, I tried to steer the conversation back to safer ground. "Well, I hope you enjoy the food. I made some of my famous barbecue ribs." But Shirley wasn't done. "You know, Keith, some of the neighbors mentioned they were surprised to see you here by the pool the other day," she said, folding her arms. "They thought maybe you weren't, well, up to much." Her tone dripped with condescension. I could feel my face heat up again, caught between frustration and humiliation. "I do have a job, you know," I said through gritted teeth. "I was just enjoying my day off." "Clearly," she retorted with a laugh that did nothing to mask her disdain. "Busy day of sunbathing, right?" The laughter around us had dulled, my neighbors sensing the tension that crackled in the air. I took a deep breath, glancing at the barbecue, focusing on the sizzle of the meat. I wasn't going to let her get to me. Trying to regain control of the moment, I turned to the crowd. "Anyone tried the potato salad? It's my mom's recipe." That brought a few chuckles and lightened the mood temporarily. But I could feel Shirley's eyes on me, her determining gaze trying to find flaws in my efforts. "Keith, is it really necessary to have gatherings like this?" she continued, almost as if she were directing the conversation. "What if someone gets out of hand? Think of the children." I couldn't believe how patronizing she was being. "Everyone here knows each other, Shirley. We're all friends," I replied, my voice firmer this time. "Besides, gatherings like this build community." "Or they can tear it apart," she shot back, her eyes sparkling with a mix of challenge and delight. Just then, a friend of mine chimed in. "Shirley, we appreciate your concern, but nothing crazy happens here. We look out for each other." Her eyes flickered momentarily, and I caught a glimpse of surprise before she masked it with her usual smirk. Sure, she said, waving her hand dismissively. "But it only takes one wild party to change things." "Or it takes one person with a wild imagination," I muttered quietly, hoping no one else heard me. The evening continued with the sweet scent of barbecue in the air, but I couldn't shake the feeling that this wasn't over. In the back of my mind, I felt like I was standing on the edge of a tumultuous wave with Shirley. She was determined to undermine me, and I wouldn't let her. I was sent to protect my place in this neighborhood, not just for myself, but for everyone who called it home. As the laughter resumed and friends gathered around the grill, I made a silent vow to confront Shirley again if I had to. If she thought she could control my life, she had another thing coming. The warmth of the setting sun felt good on my skin, but I knew I had to prepare for the storm that was brewing just beyond my fence. This would not be the last I'd see of her, or her manipulations. As I walked back toward the grill, I could feel everyone's eyes still lingering on the scene between Shirley and me. The air was thick, heavy with an unspoken tension that rattled my nerves. I couldn't shake the feeling that tonight was just beginning, that Shirley wouldn't back down easily. "Hey, Keith, you okay?" Jenny asked, concern etched on her face as she approached. "Yeah, just peachy," I replied with forced lightness, trying to mask the anger simmering beneath my calm demeanor. It only took one person to disrupt the peace we had built, and I was determined not to let her win. "Don't let her get to you," she said softly, her eyes darting toward Shirley, who had retreated to the edge of the yard, her posture relaxed now but her eyes still sharp. "Some people just thrive on chaos." "Tell me about it," I muttered, my gaze lingering on Shirley. I could see the self-satisfied smile on her face, as if she were reveling in the turmoil she had created. "But I won't let her intimidate me." Jenny nodded, but I could see worry shadowing her expression. "Just be careful, okay? You don't want to escalate things more than they already are." But as I stood there, heart racing, it was clear to me that I couldn't back down. I needed a plan to neutralize Shirley's influence before it spread through our neighborhood like wildfire. The thought of what others might believe about me and my home fueled my determination. Later that night, after everyone had left and the laughter faded, I sat outside on my porch, staring into the darkness. The only sounds were the distant chirping of crickets and the soft rustle of leaves in the breeze. My mind raced, searching for a way to confront the situation head-on without losing my cool. Just then, I heard a soft rustle nearby. My heart skipped a beat. I squinted into the dim light, thinking it might be an animal, but instead I saw a figure slip through the shadows. It was Shirley again, creeping close to my yard as if she was hiding something. "What are you up to?" I called out, my voice firm but edged with the adrenaline coursing through me. She froze, momentarily startled. "Just enjoying the night," she replied, her tone too casual. But there was something in her posture that suggested she was up to no good. "Don't play games with me. Shirley, what are you really doing here?" I narrowed my eyes, stepping off the porch. My instincts flared. It was time to expose her for who she really was. "Relax, Keith. I'm just taking a walk," she replied. But her eyes darted toward the back of my house, and I followed her gaze, sensing that there was more happening than she let on. "Why are you so interested in my backyard, anyway?" I pressed, my heart racing. I could feel the confrontation boiling to the surface, and I had to know what she was hiding. "Just wondering," she said, her voice surprisingly soft, "if you were really the good neighbor you pretend to be." That taunt hit home, twisting my gut. What's that supposed to mean? Let's just say, people are curious about you, Keith. You might want to think about how you present yourself next time. There was a coldness in her tone that sent chills down my spine. Before I could respond, she suddenly turned and darted away, disappearing into the night. Confusion and anger collided within me. What did she mean by that? What games was she playing? I returned to the porch, a storm of thoughts churning in my mind. I had to act fast. I couldn't let her manipulate people's perceptions any longer. I decided then and there that I would gather the neighbors for a meeting, not just to defend myself, but to show them that I was not going to be intimidated or pushed around. My thoughts raced as I planned, but I couldn't escape the feeling that the confrontation would be much bigger than I anticipated. I knew that Shirley wouldn't take kindly to being challenged. The stakes were high, and I braced myself for the battle ahead. The next morning arrived with the sun breaking through the clouds, bringing clarity to my chaotic thoughts. I grabbed a notepad and started jotting down points I wanted to address. I would focus on unity, on sharing ideas about improving our neighborhood rather than letting fear and suspicion rule. But deep down, I couldn't shake the awareness that Shirley would seek to undermine everything I tried to build. As I prepared to face her head-on, I felt a surge of determination mixed with unease. I wouldn't back down. I would stand strong for myself and my neighbors. However, I had a nagging feeling that Shirley wasn't done with her games. She had something planned, something that could change everything, and I needed to be ready for whatever twist she would throw my way next. I gathered my notes and headed outside, the cool morning air refreshing against my skin, shaking off the unease that had haunted me since my confrontation with Shirley. Each step felt determined, a silent vow to reclaim my space and protect what I'd built. I walked past my pool, now a symbol of stubborn resilience rather than a target of judgment. That evening, I held a meeting at my house, inviting neighbors to discuss our community. I set up chairs in my backyard, arranging them in a circle, and prepared snacks and drinks as I waited. Each passing minute heightened my anticipation, my heart racing at the thought of finally confronting Shirley in front of others. The first few neighbors drifted in, their faces curious yet supportive as they took seats. Jenny was among them, giving me an encouraging nod. I felt bolstered by her presence, reminded that I wasn't alone in this fight. "Thanks for coming, everyone," I began, trying to maintain a steady voice. I wanted to bring us all together to foster a better sense of community. The recent misunderstandings, especially regarding my backyard and Shirley's concerns, made me realize we need to be openly clear about how we support one another. As I spoke, I noticed Shirley lurking at the edge of the yard, her arms crossed and an unreadable expression on her face. It was as if she thought she could intimidate me into silence again, but I refused to let her stifling presence derail my intentions. I invited everyone to share their thoughts, hoping for an open dialogue. To my relief, several neighbors chimed in, discussing their love for the neighborhood and emphasizing the importance of unity. Laughter mixed with earnest reflections reminded me of why I had stayed here for so long. Then, shifting gears, I turned to Shirley. "I think it's important to address our different perspectives. Shirley," I said, forcing calm into my voice, "do you want to share what brought up all these concerns about your fellow neighbors?" Shirley hesitated, a flicker of surprise crossing her face. For a split second, I dared to hope she might back down, but she quickly masked it. "Of course, being part of a community means being alert. There are people who don't fit in well," she said with an edge, her eyes sliding past me. "And I've noticed things that shouldn't be ignored." I could feel tension rise as whispers flitted through the group. "What do you mean, things?" I pressed, emboldened by the support around me. Shirley cleared her throat, her demeanor shifting to something more sinister. "I think we should focus on who truly belongs in this neighborhood. Some people may bring unwanted attention." My heart raced. "Are you suggesting I don't belong here?" "Merely pointing out concerns," she snapped back, her eyes narrowing. "People have noticed." "Notice what?" I challenged, my pulse pounding in my ears. "Inconsistencies in your property, your habits. Let's just say some might choose to keep a close eye on you," she said lightly, her tone dripping with false innocence. Before I could respond, Martin spoke up. "What are you talking about? Shirley? Keith has lived here for decades. We know him." Her smile widened, almost predatory. "You only see what he shows you, Martin. What about that terrible noise coming from his backyard last week? I didn't see him there." Everyone's gaze shifted to me, curiosity mixing with suspicion. "Terrible noise?" I echoed, confusion clouding my mind. "I mean the sounds of voices, inexplicable laughter," she continued, raising an eyebrow. "Isn't it odd he was home alone?" A knot twisted in my gut. I remembered that late-night gathering of friends I had hosted a week ago. They laughed loudly, but that was just life being lived, wasn't it? "It was just some friends over," I replied slowly, growing increasingly agitated. "That's what neighbors do, you know." "Do we?" she replied coolly. "The question is, what else is going on behind those walls?" A collective murmur rippled through the group, and I felt the weight of judgment beginning to bear down on me. "You're twisting the narrative. Shirley, you know me. If anyone here knows my character, it's you." "Is that so?" she shot back, raising an eyebrow. "We can only go by patterns. And what about when your yard mysteriously went unchecked for weeks? I noticed the weeds. What if someone were to report you for that?" "I take care of my home." I fired back, anger surging within me. This is getting ridiculous. Suddenly someone gasped, and I turned to see Jenny's eyes wide. "Wait, I saw her peering over the fence the other night, right before the police came. She was watching you." Gasps echoed from the neighbors, confirmation of what I had suspected. Shirley had been spying on me, gathering her twisted claims to build a case. "Why are you so determined to bring division?" I asked her, the rage now boiling just beneath the surface. "Because it's my duty to protect this community," she said, drawing herself up with feigned righteousness. "We can't let just anyone call this place home." The crowd was restless now. My friends, my allies, began murmuring amongst themselves. I could feel Shirley's grip on the conversation loosening, but I needed to drive this home. No community is built on fear and exclusion. I shouted, every ounce of passion pouring into my words. If you want to protect our neighborhood, then try bringing it together, not tearing us apart. In that moment, I felt a shift in the energy surrounding us, a wave of solidarity washing over my neighbors. I turned my gaze to them, pleading with my eyes to see me for who I was, not what Shirley had tried to portray. Suddenly, Shirley began to backpedal, sensing the power she had momentarily lost. Enough! You're all so naive. You don't see the truth staring you in the face. Even now, he's still hiding things, she shouted, pressing against a retreating tide of support. But her words felt like a desperate final gasp. You know what? I said, stepping forward, heart racing. Fine. If you want to investigate me, then come to me directly. You want transparency? I'm an open book. But don't think you can plant fear in the hearts of good people and walk away unchallenged. With that, a rumble of agreement rose from my neighbors. They stepped closer, standing united, and I could see Shirley's confidence crumbling. I'll take my chances, I declared, because at the end of the day, this community is built on trust, not deceit, and I refuse to let fear divide us any longer. Suddenly, an unexpected twist unfolded. One neighbor, an older woman who had always been quiet, stood up. I've seen the way you pitted everyone against each other, Shirley, and I'm tired of it. Way better than this. Her words rang out loud and clear, and others began to stand in agreement. One by one, more people spoke up, sharing their own experiences with Shirley's meddling ways. All focused on the importance of coming together. As the tide turned, Shirley stumbled back, her facade slipping. This isn't over, she snapped, desperation creeping into her voice. But it fell flat as the crowd continued pressing forward, no longer willing to entertain her lies. Then do your worst, I shouted, feeling a rush of empowerment. But we won't live in fear of your games anymore. And with that, the atmosphere shifted positively, a wall of unity forming against Shirley's deceptions. The meeting concluded with plans to host more community events, greater togetherness, as a promise to stand firm. But as I stood there, a lingering sensation crept over me, a foreboding awareness. I turned around, searching the evening sky. The darkness felt heavy, pregnant with lingering threats. I knew the battle was over for now, but surely this wasn't the last I'd see of Shirley. For even as we celebrated our victory, I couldn't escape the chilling sensation that I had unwittingly stirred a dangerous hornet's nest. And the next attack might come when I least expected it, leaving me to wonder just how far Shirley would go to reclaim her control.